Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. In my last video, I showed you how I made the blue underdress for Eowyn's Helm's Deep or refugee dress. And today, I'm going to show you the construction of the overdress. For this part of the costume, I used a raw silk or silk noil. When people hear silk, they automatically think luxurious, fine and smooth. But raw silk is anything but. It's actually quite rough. And if you're not familiar with your fibers, you'd never guess it was silk, which makes it a perfect overdress for traveling the wilds of Rohan and working in the caves of Helm's Deep. I cut the body in two pieces, like I did with the underdress. As I didn't want the hem of the underdress showing, I made sure to cut the overdress 2 inches longer. Once the pieces are cut, I pinned the shoulder edges together, and then pinned down the body, so that when I mark the collar and placements for the side cuts, there won't be any shifting. I used the underdress as my guide for the collar and shoulders. You do want to be able to see a little bit of the underdress at the neck, so I marked and cut accordingly. I also marked 2 inches out from the collar to mark how wide I wanted the shoulders to be. The shoulder seams are the first to get stitched up, as it would be kind of impossible to fit the dress without them. I used a backstitch, as this is the strongest method of seaming. I didn't trim off the excess fabric yet, as I wanted to fit the side cutouts all at once. Since the measurements start from the shoulders and work their way down, I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room to play with. After the shoulders are seamed, I finished them off by felling them down. That is, turning one raw edge over the other and securing it to the body with a whip stitch. I then hemmed the collar, as I wanted to be sure the overdress fit from the top down. It was then time to make the cutouts. I pretty much winged this, using the behind-the-scenes photos as a reference, marking, cutting, trying on, and trimming until I got the fit I wanted. Which is why I went over my final lines with a pencil. I also did this with the dress folded in half, so that I could cut out both sides at once and have them be symmetrical. Laying flat, it kind of reminds me of Lady Cassandra from Doctor Who. Moisturize me. Now with the two pieces just cut straight, it felt constricting. I didn't have enough freedom of movement below my hips, and I knew Eowyn would have wanted a lot if she was going to be working and lifting and potentially fighting. The original overdress looks like they added flare to the body before cutting it out in one piece, but I added a set of gores running from hem to the bottom of the cutouts, right about at the hip. They're not going to take a lot of tension, so I used a running backstitch for these seams. And then the gores get felled down. I used a pin to maintain tension as I stitched, which makes the process a lot easier and faster. Once again, tiny details are key to any Lord of the Rings costume. For instance, the overdress, which looks like it's just a straight shoulder hem, actually has tiny cap sleeves. I measured out how far down I wanted them, and cut them in a crescent moon shape. The straight edge then gets stitched down. The cap pieces get turned inside out, and then the middle is matched to the shoulder seam. Then the rest of the cap is pinned to the shoulder, starting from the middle and working outward. The cap sleeves get backstitched to the body. Technically, you could use a running stitch as the seam doesn't take a lot of strain, but it is 3 layers of fabric, so backstitching ensures it will stay in place. I then roll hem all the edges. The outer curves of the cutouts were the hardest to do, as they can be a little tight, and you don't want them to end up in a point. So it did take a bit of wrangling to make them roll and sit the way I wanted. Yes, I know I'm not using a thimble here, and I really should be. It was a lightweight material, and I'm still not crazy about how thimbles feel on my fingers. The overdress then gets a little bit of trim around the collar edge, using a fine silk thread to keep the stitches as inconspicuous as possible. I couldn't get a high enough definition picture to see exactly what was used in the original, but I used a bit of braid that I stitched along the collar hem. I used a small whip stitch and alternated sides matching the direction of the braid. So now we come to the fastenings. The overdress ties at each side with a straw-colored braided cord. I didn't have much in the way of cording, but I did still have a lot of embroidery floss. So I took 2 subtly different colors and braided them together, then took 3 braided strands and braided them together to make a cord that looked the way I wanted. I'm sure there's a more accurate way out there, but this is what worked for me. I used the leg of my desk as my anchor point and wrapped the braid around as it got longer. The most efficient method? Maybe not. Did it get the job done? Yes, it did. Oh yeah, I also sewed eyelets into all the outer points of the dress so I could thread the cord through. Important detail, that. I also did not hem the bottom of the overdress. Looking at the reference photos, it is not hemmed. It is rough and worn at the bottom. She has clearly worn this before. What I did do was pull out a few threads at the bottom, giving it a worn and slightly frayed look. With that, my Eowyn's Helm's Deep dress is finished. When I go to do anything creative, I am a major overplanner. So for a project that wasn't even on my radar until a week before I started sewing it, I love how this turned out. I'm really learning to appreciate the simplicity and joy of hand sewing an entire garment. And it has the added benefit of being able to binge watch TV and YouTube, which I can't do at a sewing machine. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the big reveal. And what Eowyn dress is complete, without a bit of obligatory sword swinging. I'm so pleased to finally have a direct replication of a Lord of the Rings costume, and now I can dream of one day being able to return to Edoras, next time wearing my gown.